Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I'm hoping it's going to be a really interesting time for you. It is actually National Teachers Day, which is a wonderful time to be celebrating teachers and teacher careers. And what I will show you today is not just what you see when you get a teacher card or a teacher role, but how to find them, and then some background information that will add to your knowledge and grow your whole experience of family history. So let's begin. In the spirit of reconciliation, New South Wales State Archives acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. First, I'd like to, early in the talks that I do on career records, to mention that you have to keep in mind access periods. When it comes to teacher records, they're currently open after 50 years. So that means that for anything in that period, you have to contact the Department of Education directly, and you can do that through the email link down below. Now we're going to start with teacher careers to 1970. What I'm going to do is show you a little bit of background information that I researched off the Department of Education website that is going to be really relevant to both what I'm showing you today and also all of your own research on this subject. So it's more wordy than my normal screens, but it's for a reason. I want you to be able to use it as a reference. Now, until 1905, teachers in government schools were trained on the job as pupil teachers, who usually began their 4-year course between the ages of 13 and 16. During school hours, pupil teachers taught an individual class full-time, and each day outside of school hours, they were instructed in teaching method and content by the head teacher. Preference for entrance into training schools was given to pupil teachers who had completed their course, but many graduating pupil teachers immediately became teachers or assistant teachers. So that's sort of a concept that's very, very different to today. So I thought I'd introduce it to you right away. The promotion system from 1854 is a system of classifying apprentice teachers and remained in place until 1943. In order to progress beyond the minimum salary level and advance in the service, teachers had to pass a series of examinations set by the department, as well as demonstrating their efficiency to inspectors. The teacher certificate introduced in 1943 was awarded to all new teachers after appropriate pre-service training and probationary period. No further qualifications were demanded. Now, I am actually an ex-school teacher myself, and so where relevant, I might introduce some of my experience. I have a teacher certificate that I was awarded in 1988, so the system remained in place until that time at least. Teacher colleges. The training of primary school teachers was controlled by the Department of Education until 1970, when teachers and colleges were absorbed in the tertiary education system. And from 1911, most secondary school teachers undertook a university degree course, followed by a University Diploma of Education or a 1-year professional course at a teacher's college. So what I've done is I've sort of, in a sense, given you some background information. Once we start looking at records, you're going to see where this is relevant. Just a little summary of the teacher training. It started off that they began as pupil teachers, of course. In that time, they were given either 1 month, 3 month or 6 month training. 3 months eventually evolved to become the standard through the late 1800s. And from 1883, the period of teaching was moved to 12 months for most students. From 1930, it was discontinued, replaced by a 2-year course. The 43 certificate was awarded, so that was, in a sense, you became classified in your first school. And all teachers' colleges had either been established by 1974 as colleges of advanced education, and by 1988, the university system was replaced by a unified system. So there's your background. I hope you've all been very good students today because you're about to have a test. No, that was not true. I'm not giving you a test. We move on to just a quick description of the teacher's roles, which is one of the series that I'm going to be showing you. These roles provide a service record for each teacher, include a date of birth, examination results, appointments, promotions, and a date of resignation. So most records of this era, from this time period, in most public service roles would be roughly the same, providing you with that basic information. Now, what I've decided to do today is to have a bit of fun with this topic. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a very average class photograph that we have in our collection, where there is a teacher present. And if I'm able to identify who the teacher is, I will show you their career record. I couldn't resist this one because it says Miss Clement's teacher. So we're going to look at Miss Clement's career record. Now, this is how you begin if you're coming in from a flat start and you want to find something in the teacher roles from this early period. You can do this in the reading room as well. You can do this at home, this part. Online indexes, T for teachers, search the index, search the index. I always pause when I come to indexes, and just for the sake of really good promotion, I really do recommend that when people are new to this kind of a topic, they read the information on this page. It's about the index. It tells you what series we got things from. It gives you background information. In this case, it tells us we have 14,800 people in this index, and that the index is entirely on reels 1991 to 1998. Each index is different, but if you want to learn from archival practice, context is everything. Now we get through to the school teacher roles. There's always a standard series of names up there for you. So what I'm going to do in the right-hand side in this box, I'm writing Clements because I found out that, yeah, her name is Miss Clements, that's right, yes. Now I didn't know which one it was. So a little bit of investigation, I worked out that it was this one, Geraldine Clements. Now what you're going to find interesting is that it has a C also roll 2, page 742. And if you look further down the index, there it is. So we actually have to look at two places on the reels. One is on 193, one is on 192 to see the whole record. And I'm going to show you why that's important information to have. I'm now going to the details of one. And what you can see is what we call the item page or the index page. Now on this page, you have lots of tools. If you're sitting at home and you just want to order a copy, you can in one of those two links. They're both shopping carts, and you just click it and you follow. Well, I'll show you. I'll click one now. Click, and it takes you through to a choice menu. Now, on the left-hand side, you have to choose hard copy, which will be a photocopy, or digital copy, which will be a scan and an image sent to you by email or Dropbox, whichever is easiest, depending on the size. In case of cards, it won't be very big. I, without hesitation, choose digital copy because I'm now a digital native. Add to cart, and you get this now. Cart is now updated successfully, and of course, you then click place order. Now it takes you through to a checkout, which is literally on the right-hand side. I can see that I've got what I've ordered. Geraldine Clements, great, that's her. But then all I would do is put in my information and then order it. I won't take the presentation any further down that line because everyone's information is their own, and yeah, we don't need it, so we'll move on. Now this is her record. Now what you're going to notice first is the format. I want to give you a little bit of a sense of what it's like. We have very large volumes in the record, in the archive, and this is a page out of this very large volume. Now you can imagine that page in real life would be something close to A3 and a little bit bigger, I think. Now that size then has a series of career points written down on the page. Now the weakness of that is that it's sort of, in a sense, you can't change it. You can't move someone to a different spot in the book. So literally, in the case of Geraldine Clements, and very instructively, thank you for that, right? We see that only the top bit is relevant for her. So I'll get rid of the other bit. And it says C roll 2 folio 742. So I think this was probably the beginning of her career. And for whatever reason, that it didn't continue at that time, but it did continue a little bit later on, something to that effect in a clerical sense. They've come back, revisited Geraldine Clements, and so they've said, go to the second roll, we're going to have more information there. So in this case, what you see here, you'll see on the next one as well. She's 20 in 1883. We now know her date of birth, year of birth, excuse me. And we know that she was sent to temporary charge of Arthurville in June 1883. This is her full record, and it's on the second reel. You'll notice that I've referenced volume 2, folio 742. 742 is the page. So folio will nearly always mean the page of the book. We have the basic information. Her age in 1883 is 20, and she's unmarried at that time. Now we're going to take a little bit of a dive into what you get when you start looking at things. Now the first one, it says appointed pupil teacher at Wellington. Now you remember that, I hope you all did your homework, boys and girls, because do you remember in that first slide I showed you that the pupil teacher is, you could be appointed at a younger age, but then be taught how to teach. Now, if she was appointed in 1878, we worked out that she was born in 1863, so she's 15. Emily will jump in if my maths is wrong. When I'm doing a speech, I have a tendency not to do math very well, but I believe I'm right. She started at 15. Now, then if you look down the page, you start getting all this information coming forward that gives you a sense of what she was doing and when she was doing it. And what I noticed in preparing for this presentation for you is that it's fairly similar, to even on different time periods for each person, provided they're in the service long enough. So you can look down the right-hand side, you can see the dates where things change. On the left-hand side, you can see all the events of her career. Now, they're going to be consistent with that second slide I showed you. She's promoted from class 3 to class 2. She's failed to obtain promotion on an examination. She's resigned from Wellington and it was been accepted as a candidate for a small school. I find that one in particular very interesting because it reinforces that they were applying for jobs at that time, and so their career service was school to school to school rather than being a long career with the public service. She's accepted as a candidate for a small school and instructed to take control of Arthurville. I also noticed that, notice one thing for you, and I'll show you what I find interesting. They use the word removed. Now, removed is not a bad thing. It is their word for what you and I would call transfer. So just think of it as that's the language of the day. It is fairly paternalistic, don't you think? We remove the person from that place and place them somewhere else. But that's a matter of, make your own mind up on that. Now you see here she was accepted and then situated in Arthurville, and then she had a series of career moves until finally, down here, I've transcribed it for you because I want to show you the texture of some of these records. In connection with the facts at inspection, informed that her explanation cannot be accepted as satisfactory, that the department has every confidence in the accuracy and justice of McLong's report, and that unless defects pointed out be removed and marked improvement be shown at next inspection, the question of reducing her classification and moving her to a 10th class school will be considered. Brutal. Okay, now this tells us a lot of things about her and also her career. Well, first of all, I find demerits on most careers that I've looked at. If most is possibly a bit too much, let's say many career cards. And so they're quite comfortable with giving people things to change. And also notice that the schools were graded. So the smaller schools were the smaller grading schools. So you had to build up to the bigger ones. Now from 1908, the public service went through a change that I always think and I always liken to what we're going through today. In today's world, you as an audience would more than anyone else would realize we have a lot of paper and book records for the past. Well, in the future, we're going to be moving towards digital records. So we're in this change where, when will the records switch to being more digital than paper? Well, that's not a question for today's topic. But I think this kind of decision was made in 1908. Now, on the left-hand side is just a standard reference register that you'd see in our collection. And those were the types of books that were storing their career records in the teacher role period. They were big, they were cumbersome. And the thing is, if only one person in that book is still in service, you've got to keep the book active on the shelves. And if you can think about it, that's difficult. That's not very efficient. So the public service decided in their infinite wisdom, and they did it for all the public service branches at around this time, to move over to cards. Now, what do cards do that add, what more do they add to the public service? Well, they make it very easy, for example, to move someone. I've just got Steed, now I've got Mr. Steed, I'll put Mr. Steed in front of Mrs. Steed, and so forth. So they're very easily manipulated. And also you can always add cards. So if someone's career goes into a second period and a third period and a fourth period, we can just add cards. So quite often when you're researching this topic, you will get a bundle of cards. I've seen many 2. I've seen a lot 3 and 4. And so you can get quite a payoff. So from the public service, this was a great change, and it meant that they didn't have to have the volumes always active on the shelves, and explains why the record types change. So let's take a look. Okay, they're going to be doing roughly the same things as before. They're very consistent, really. They're going to have particulars, training, date of birth, and date of entering the teaching service. Appointments are shown in a tabular format, showing classification, date of award, position, school, class taught, date of notification of appointment, and salary. The card formats and the details contained of them vary slightly over time, and you'll see a few different ones. And for most married teachers, there's also a change of name card. So we're going back to our website. How do you search for these? How do you get a copy is I think the first choice, because so many people live fair distance away. Well, here, this is what you have to do. It's slightly different. We go to copy services, we go to copy service form, and we go here to professions and occupation cards. Now remember, this is not at this stage, at the time of recording, an index series in the sense that you can find the person by name in our collection. So we have to go to the box that holds the card of the person you want. So this is the process. Now we go down to the professions and occupations part. There it is. Pull it up, and then we're putting in Eileen Dorothy Cassane, who's going to be my next example. Now the next thing it's asking for, date of birth on the right-hand side, which is important when you have a name where we don't know which one. I actually got asked for a copy this morning of a William Marshall, and I had 4 people who matched the name, and the only way to tell the difference between them was the date of birth. So I do recommend you use the date of birth. In this one, I didn't think it was necessary because Eileen Dorothy McCain is very a distinct name, 3-word names. The series that you would click is NRS 15320, Department of Education Teacher Career Cards. And remember, what I'm teaching you now works for anything that's in that list, and that list will grow over time. So you've got all sorts of career records there, and I will leave it to you to explore on your own time. Now, next thing down, this is where you get to be the archivist. We need to know the container that we're gonna find that record in. So you go here, you click on the Teacher Career Cards button there, and it provides a list of all the teacher career card boxes we have. And if you look at it, it has names, so it's alphabetical, White Oak to Wilson, Blautovich to Bingham, and so forth. Now, there's recently been a second consignment added to this series, so it's got a lot of boxes now, but I'm going to just cut to the chase because I want this beginning experience to be really easy for you to follow. So I just went all the way down until I found the box which said Kennedy to Lake, which is going to hold Cassane. Make it a little bit bigger. That gives me the exact location of her career card. Hopefully we have one, of course. And if you look at the numbering, it does actually tell you a lot. From an archivist point of view, it tells you everything I need to know. It tells me the series, which is the type of record, and we're talking about 15320 for the rest of the talk. It's in consignment 1 and in box 31. So I just went to the item page, and I just wanted you to note that code I'm now copying into memory because we're going back to the first screen and I'm pasting it in. Bingo, done. So now you have an order ready to go. I didn't put a date of birth. Small demerit. I think I should have put a date of birth in just to make it a little bit better. But at the time I did this, I didn't have a date of birth. So perhaps I should be less hard on myself. Next, we go down here to continue to check out. And right, bingo, we're now at the point where I'm about to drop off, but you can proceed from here and next step, check out, and off you go. You can order the copy. Okay, now what do you get? First, let's meet Miss Cassane with her class. It's Lochinvar Public School. Take a look at the description on the right-hand side, which archivists always put with the records that we put on screen. We will give you the source, and sometimes it's truly very important, and I think it might be here too. It tells us Lochinvar Public School. So when I find Miss Cassane, I have to find Lochinvar on her card, and then what we noticed there is that she got married and became Mrs. Howell. That'll come back into my talk in a little bit. The photo is from 1915. This is her career card. Just make it a little bit bigger for you. We're just getting ready now. I noticed the first thing there, she was trained at Hereford House, which was mentioned in my first 2 slides. It was a training facility and courses were 6 months until 1918 when they went to 1 year. So she did the 6-month training course. And you'll notice there's Lochinvar, where we had the photograph taken. It gives you the salary on the right-hand side and her grading as well. It tells you that her future schools, Auburn, Auburn North, Auburn boys, I think that is, and Cessnock, girls. And then resignation accepted on the 31st of the 3rd, 1924. Now, because I know she got married, I couldn't help myself. I did the family historian thing to do, which was look for another record. And of course, I find her being married in 1924. There's her marriage certificate. It's not her marriage certificate, it's the index result to her marriage certificate, to be correct. So now we have a connection. She resigned when she got married. And the thing to keep in mind is that women were expected to resign until getting married, once getting married, until 1966. So it was an era, a 1960s issue that they corrected that unfairness. If you're ever curious on that subject, there were several acts of parliament, essentially boiling down to the thought that women were taking men's jobs. I kid you not, I'll let you do the research on that element if you want to. All gone by 1966. Appointment confirmed in 1921 on the back side of the card. And so we say goodbye to Eileen Dorothy Cassane, and we say hello to Martin Justilius. Now, I actually fell in love with this photo when I first saw it because he looks so young in this photo, and it reminds me of my first year of teaching when I was the babyface teacher. So I couldn't resist Mr. Justilius. Also, he has one of the greatest assets to family history. He has a distinctive name, which makes him very easy to find. Now, we'll notice what we can learn from this. And there's a number of things that I find fascinating about this card, even though it's very short this time. He went to North Creek. Now, if you remember back, I'm going back because I wanted you to get this straight. I have a photo of him at Lennox Head Public School. If we go through his card, you say, John, you've got the wrong one, distinctive name and all. There's no Lennox Head. But I did the right thing, as a family historian should. I checked further. Now, on the Department of Education website, it's government schools since 1848 history database. I found out that Lennox Head was known as North Creek until 1961. So with just a little bit of research, saved my outcomes and also added to my knowledge. Schools change over time, and just without rushing off to new things, this site is very good for getting an idea of what a school was like. Quite often they start as a provisional school, they become a public school, sometimes they close, sometimes they have name changes. And this government school since 1848 website, every archivist here would go there when we want to find out a little bit more about the school. And I strongly recommend that you do that if you're curious along the same lines. Now, you notice that he became an assistant at Bexley in 1928, and he retired in 1933. And looking at his date of birth, we can see that he was 63 at retirement, which means that in the early stages of his career, why am I doing this maths to myself? He was in his 30s. A bit of admin on the other side of the card. Services retained 12 months, then cancelled, then services retained another 12 months. So it sounds like he was on a contract at the end. So we wave goodbye to Mr. Martin Justilius. And final card, we say hello to Mr. Colin McLennan. This is Lawn School. It's a lovely photograph, as they always are when we do have school photographs. You'll notice on the left-hand side, there's a lady. She's actually his assistant teacher. So that gives us a little bit of an insight into how it worked. You have the main teacher, and then you have the assistant teacher. Possibly he was a head teacher. We'll see. Let's look at his card. So this is his card. Make it a little bit bigger for you. Now let's get into the little details. Okay, we're going to go on in quite a bit of detail on this one. First thing is, I'm going to add something from my experience. I actually was told when I first started teaching that my serial number is, and you will remember it for the rest. And the man who's now in my second career, well, retirement isn't too far away, I still remember my number, and it started with 87. That first two digits are the year that the person joined the service. The second digits are the gender. 50 means that he's male, and then 87 is number in the year. And so until very recent times, like the last 10 years, this was a system was in place, and I was very disappointed when I heard it changed. I might have you know as well, because I thought it was a great system, and they're right. I do remember my number, even though I'm not in teaching anymore. Over here, of course, we have the basic information, date of birth, the gender. He was also trained in Hereford House, and it would have been the 6-month course. He's being paid £110 at Glenpatrick Provisional, and then moved to Bow Hill Provisional, a little bit more money. So he's gone up a classification. I said gone up a classification, and I just realised it tells us there. He stayed on 7, but there was a pay rise. That's interesting, a very large pay rise. Do you see how once you get into the little nitty-gritty of career records, you start drawing information out? and one thing can lead to way, and you find out a lot of things. His pay went up to 201, and still on the same grade. Those series of pay rises is a very curious thing to me. I don't have an answer for you right now on that one. He became an assistant at Bagara, and then he went to Henry Endy as a teacher, and then he was appointed to Lorne in 1921, which is the photograph that we just looked at. I don't want to jump yet. I didn't put any more information on this slide, but we can still glean things from here. He was at Kolong and he was at Waratah. Notice that they've moved to stamps in the 1940s, and notice also on the left-hand side, they've done different sorts of markers, and whether it be connected to his pay. He would have been connected to the Public Service Board in 1921. The teaching acts don't start till sometime later. So they were considered public servants for a long time under the Public Service Act. We'll move to the next page. There's a bit of information here, so I think I'll give you a bit of a demonstration. He was informed in 1918. Now, just quickly, I'm going back to where was he in 1918? He was at his first school, Glenpatrick Provisional, and he was a student teacher. And in 1918, he was 22. Okay, we got the context. He was informed that in connection with 2 official letters from him that the speaking and composition therein are wretched. Yes, it does say wretched. And warned that unless he succeeds in making himself reasonably proficient in these subjects, question of discontinuance of his services as a teacher must be considered. Goodness gracious me, because of his composition. But also, isn't that interesting? Because they weren't professionally degree trained at this time. They're, in a sense, they're learning on the job. So this kind of feedback is perhaps relevant. He's married on the 7th of August 1920 to Miss P.M. Guest at Narrabri by the Reverend M. Ronayne, Roman Catholic. So we now know he's Roman Catholic, and his full appointment was confirmed in 1922. Now, in this case, we have extra cards. It says he was retired in 1960, which means that he retired at 64. The warning is there, 1980, same warning as I showed you a moment ago. And I do find there are, if I was to go through a series of career cards and try and guess how many warnings would I anticipate, I'd say not many, but you do see lots. You do see lots. So it was different times and they used these sorts of mechanisms for different reasons. So we say goodbye to Mr. Colin McLennan. And now we move to what I think is worth all honourable mentions. I stuck to my knitting today with the topic being 2 types of records. I didn't want to extend out too far and confuse the message, but these records are also available to you. Just notice the years on the right-hand side. You've got teacher leave cards, very rarely get accessed in the reading room, but you can work out when they went on leave. And you've got teacher career cards for casual employees for that period 1949 to 71. I'd anticipate that they would look very similar to what we've seen here, but they would be, well, they'd be more temporary, you know, start here, stop there, that sort of thing. You've got results of teacher examinations, which backs up a lot of what we saw today. We saw results of examinations. We saw indications of examinations, passing and failing in the cards. So if you want to take it further, there's at least that one more option. And there's reports of memoranda received concerning training school applicants. So I would anticipate in that series you would find letters from the individuals, and miscellaneous letters received is also worth the mention. Now, if you're curious to learn more, or if you just want to recap what you've learned today and possibly learn a few new things as well, because I didn't put everything into the talk, you can go to our teachers guide on Research A to Z and just click teachers or go to teachers, and on this page you go school teachers guide on the right hand side there, more. Now, always go to the guide, always. If you wanted to know what it's like being a reference archivist in working in a reading room, we go to the guides all the time, absolutely. You know, and the reason is they're very well written, they're very well vetted over time, so they're updated when there are changes, and they give you a handle on a subject very quickly, and they can make you from zero to hero very fast from your point of view. And you might get angles that you've never thought of. And if you didn't read the guide, you would never get. Our website now is really good at putting a lot of different guides onto the website. So all you got to do is go to research A to Z and choose. You can even change your mind. If you notice there, I could click on the word indexes and just move over to the indexes and do a search in the roles. So they're very good at funneling you through the information. And without going too much further, because this is a short webinar, just have a look at the variety of information all up to the roles. Yeah, lots and lots of different types of records. If you're curious about some of these things, I mentioned them in my schools webinar, which is on the website. And I didn't take the slide any further down than the roles because that's what one of the topics today was. So, wow, that was a lot of fun. I hope you had a lot of fun as well. I hope you enjoyed it, and certainly I hope we get some of you looking back and maybe you want to see the first bits again with those 2 slides where I put some information on the teacher career of that time, of the time frame of the cards that we have. And also don't forget, that is a summary of what I found on the Department of Education website when I looked into the training of teachers. It was very good on that subject, and I gave you the benefit of the best bits today. When it comes to the records, they're easy to find, and I personally love career cards and career records generally, because it's one of the ways you can really flesh out the story of a person. You know, both the ups and the downs, the promotions, the reprimands, and you see the humanity of the person and the change over time with their salary. You can also have a little bit of an indication of what their lifestyle must have been, how it may have changed. You might find it a curious thing. Why did that Mr. McLennan, I think it was, had those series of pay rises? Why did he? That's an interesting question. That's something you can look up in your own research. So I've trained you, and I look forward to seeing you in the reading room. Thanks for your time.